No, Cookie, I'm not fired up that your president bombed Iran, okay? Oh, hey, everybody. Welcome to JL's Book Club, where we don't talk about Fight Club, the book, because we didn't read Fight Club, the book. We got 2 books to review this month, but before then, we get to our beverage of the month, and I think still no repeats. I have done a kombucha before, but somebody, because it was Pride Month, decided to buy me Synergy, the real kombucha trilogy. It's got some extra sugar in it. They say not to get one with too much sugar, but I don't think this one rises to the level of damaging amounts of sugar. Kombucha basically tastes like if you took the worst parts of beer and apple juice, but it's good for your gut health, I guess. I don't drink enough of it to know. I go through these phases where every year I have like a week and a half where I drink kombucha and I'm like, I don't feel any healthier. Back to milkshakes. But this month's beverage is the trilogy edition of kombucha. Sure, it looks like fruit punch, but boy, oh boy, will your kids hate you if you serve this to them. Kombucha. So, 2 books, and I promised last month I was going to try to get to the 2 of the books that my uncle had given me. I'm in the middle of one. It's a little slow going. It's not that it's a bad book, but it's not a great book. So I'm not done with that one yet. So that one's just going to live on in my memory when I finish with it. It will not be memorialized in a award-winning book review video. But I did read one of the books he gave me, In Harm's Way, by Doug Stanton. It was a bestseller. It was about the sinking of the USS Indianapolis, which is the ship that brought one of the bombs, I believe the bomb that would be dropped on Hiroshima. It delivered that bomb to the middle of the Pacific. And boy, did they pay a price after. Unknowing, but a Japanese submarine took them out, and then many of them got eaten by sharks. And it's one of those things that just tells you how humanity lives we're like 3 days away from becoming animals. It's a scary thing to think, but like, you take away food, water, shelter, and sleep from people, you're an animal. You will become a feral animal, which, all jokes aside, makes you just realize when somebody's living on the street, unhoused, however you want to phrase it, for days, weeks, years. It's sort of a miracle that we don't have a bigger violence and assault problem, but that's just me being a weak on crime liberal. But the reason I actually finally got to reading this book was when me and my cinematographer saw the play written by Robert Shaw's son called The Shark is Broken, about the making of Jaws. And it reminded me, we watched Jaws before seeing that. It reminded me, like, Robert Shaw's character, Quint, was one of the people on the Indianapolis. And so he's describing that, and that's why he says, "Never wear a life vest again, Chief," because it was such a harrowing. He's basically like, I'll go down. I don't need a life vest. I'd rather die than endure something like that again. And Jaws, spoiler, 50th anniversary this week. Spoiler, Jaws abides. Jaws makes sure he doesn't suffer a ton of time in the water when he eats them at the end of Jaws. Spoiler. But this book I really enjoyed. I really do like these kind of survival true stories. I think I reviewed The Wager by David Graham. Graham or Graham? The guy who wrote Killers of the Flower Moon, etc. I really like that book. It was very good. But my gold standard was In the Heart of the Sea, which Ron Howard made into a very bad movie with Chris Hemsworth. That book was awesome, but it was also the first of these books that I read. But that was also a very well-reviewed, best-selling book. In Harm's Way, very strong member of this, shipwrecked tragedy club. But especially because it was like, this one is more modern than those. Those were like, we guided ourselves by the stars and, had to eat like dried meat for 3 months traveling the sea. This is like relatively modern. This is World War II. And in 4 days, these dudes are hallucinating. They're getting eaten by sharks. Their pets' heads are falling off. That's a Dumb and Dumber reference. Sorry, everybody. One of those obscure J-L references to one of the biggest comedies of the 1990s. J.L., where do you come up with these obscure references? It's like listening to Dennis Miller. No, I'm never going to let that comment go, because it says so much more about our society than me. And if you're wondering, what are you talking about, J.L.? Well, then you're not listening and absorbing all my content. Okay? So, here's a passage that I have to read for you from this book. It gives you a vibe of the book. But it's an enjoyable book. It's dark. Of course, there's government cover-up and treating people shit. It's not everything you want if you're a progressive, because everybody in the book is white. But it does have government treating people shitty. Actually, no, somebody's Japanese. The guy who blows up the ship. Okay? Maybe that's why they don't trust people of color. Have you ever thought about that? Okay? Just having a nice day, delivering the atomic bomb, trying to be a good sailor, and all of a sudden some Japanese man blows us all up? I don't know. Obviously, if the Japanese man had known what you were delivering, he would have blown you up more and sooner. But anyway. By mid-morning Tuesday, the boys were deeply bewildered and distraught. Their thinking now wasn't so much about being rescued. They just wanted to survive the sharks. In the nearly 36 hours since the sinking, the Haynes group had drifted ahead of the middle of the pack by about 1 mile. Close behind, about 4 miles to the north, were McCoy and his group of 4 rafts. About 4 miles east, Captain McVeigh and his 4 rafts, 1 net, and 9 men floated. Trailing McVeigh by about 1 mile was the largest group of rafters and survivors perched atop floater nets led by Twibble and Redmayne. All the while, the teardrop formation of survivors was widening, and it now covered about 12 miles from the northern end to its southern boundary, and 13 miles from its eastern edge to its expanding western leading edge. The groups were drifting farther and farther apart. As the sharks rampaged through Haynes' group, that's always a pleasant thought, right? Shark is just you're just floating in the ocean, and sharks are just picking you off like you're a buffet. Sometimes shark gets you. Quint from Jaws. Remember back then when I mentioned Jaws? Big movie also. JL, what are these movies you're referencing? Jaws? Dumb and Dumber? What? As the sharks rampaged through Haynes' group, many of whom had blindfolded themselves as protection against the harsh storm of morning light and photophobia, the rough tails ripped abrasions in the boys' dangling legs. Dehydrated, their raw skin leached of its protective oils by immersion, their bodies were turning rubbery. Ed Brown's legs and arms bloomed with hideous bruises that arose at the slightest touch. The bleeding attracted smaller tropical fish that began to nip at the exposed pieces of flesh, while at the same time barracuda began flashing about. JL, what is that? That's a reference to a band called Heart. Okay? Good band. Alone. You ever heard Alone? One of the great rock power ballads of all time. And let's not forget, All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You. One of the great songs of a one-night stand that is just honestly disturbing when you listen to it. It's got to be annoying when you write a song like that in the early 90s and Republicans don't condemn you for like bashing family values. Then you're like, oh, the song didn't get big enough. Okay, so Dumb and Dumber, Jaws, Heart. I hope you know at least 2 of those 3, but you should know all 3. Alone, great song. But Barracuda is one of their songs also. Began flashing out. It seemed to the boys that everything around them wanted them dead. Even the thick, humid air of the afternoon choked those suffering from the onset of pneumonia. My cinematographer is rubbing a pillow like it's a dog right now, and it's distracting. Not that you need to know that. Dr. Haynes paddled up to find one man, and soon there would be others, staring longingly into his trembling hands at the winking jewel of water cupped within. The boy looked up. What do you say, Doc? Just a little sip? No, Haynes warned. You can't drink it. Come on, it can't hurt, whispered the boy. It's certain death, do you understand? The boy smiled, an inscrutable smirk, and it unnerved Haynes, but he stood his ground. Finally, the boy poured the water out and swam away. Haynes, however, was horrified. He knew that if they began drinking the seawater, they'd start dying in droves. Now, that's just a small passage to give you 36 hours of these men floating at sea. And every element is like trying to kill them. The sun, the sharks, the water, like being in salt water that long as a human being. It's like we're not... It's such an incredible... It's a great book, but you actually kind of... The author does a great job of kind of detailing like the like medical issues, not just the fear and the war and everything like that, but the medical issues that just make you go, we are days from becoming animals in a raw sense. So in harm's way, it's a feel-good book, and I recommend it highly. I enjoyed it. Thank you, Uncle John, for getting it to me as part of his never-ending quest to show his biracial nephew that white guys have it tough as well. So that's been this year's entry into the, hey, white guys have it tough as well series. You know what, though? That background will play well for me. I'll be able to relate. I'll be able to relate to that. But here's the thing. Like I said last month, the difference is my uncle may have felt an identity and an affinity with certain people, as we all can for people who are like us. But he never took it into that racist realm of, yeah, so I'm a Republican. Yeah, so I love Trump. No, it's like, no, that's disgusting. I just want a little corner where I get to be like, hey, I got some Irish pride. Hey, you know, these guys built some of the country too. But it doesn't steer into that, but why do we always gotta talk about the blacks and the gays? They gotta always do their thing. That's why I'm voting for Trump. There's a big chasm. And if we could just, I think politically, maybe just respect a little bit more this part, then we can distance that part even more to the awful MAGA crowd. Anyway, second book. Bought as a birthday present this year by my brother for me. Murder the Truth. It's murder. That's a Ja Rule reference, everybody. He was a rapper in the early 2000s or mid 2000s. He also, you may know him as one of the people behind Fyre Fest, which is known as the J-L comedy of music festivals. It's written by New York Times reporter David Enrich. I don't know, I'm sorry how to pronounce it. What I will tell you is this book is fucking great. And I told my brother happily that I was really enjoying the book. I read it over a course of a couple of days. It was basically the book I read, I think on my trip to Ottawa. But this is a book about a steady campaign by the right wing to undo a landmark Supreme Court case, Sullivan versus the New York Times. It basically set the standard that to give press freedom wide latitude, the actual malice standard, which meant that to be able to successfully sue a paper for something they write, they need to either have gross negligence or actual malice in publishing falsehoods. Obviously, true things are protected. But if you write something false about somebody, a simple mistake by the press is not enough because that would be too chilling on the press. If it was just like any mistake. So now, if we haven't...
The struggle is real. That's what he...
Yeah, the struggle is real. We thought we could get through this. Oh, fewer ad breaks for this long video. Fewer, not none. Fewer. This is becoming kind of a fun part, don't you think? Cinematographer, would you be able to reach that? Where is the remote? Or do I have it on me? Oh, I have it on me. Fewer ad breaks. Fewer. This is going to become, I think, one of the fun things of these videos. Do I have a skip yet? Just tell me when I have a skip. I'll do the no look.
Under control.
This is how they stop you from this kill speech. This is how they kill free speech with YouTube ads. Skip in 25. Let me tell you something, brief story about this fireplace video. And I know this is happening more frequently because I think the dummies of the world who make fireplace videos, it used to be a nice public service, they realized 9 million or 10 million views into their video, like, we could monetize this. Well, you've lost out on $10,000 to $15,000 of revenue. Oh, fuck off. Yeah, go to your Nike store. It doesn't make cinematographer. You can relax now. It's fucked up the video. So, my thing is, after 10 million videos of not monetizing it, how broke are you now that you're like, you know, you could have paid your rent for a year with this video if you'd monetized it 8 years ago when you posted it. But what? I was doing fucking book reviews, and you're like, there's an uptick in the middle of New Jersey, and we're losing out on possibly nickels worth of revenue. Sure, it's been a decade of our video being up and getting 10 million, but let's get the revenue now. Unbelievable. So murder the truth. It's basically, you know, just like those ads we're doing, it's trying to chill speech. And it's, of course, a right-wing movement, of course. What a shock. But there are left-wing people who are not innocent in this and who try to use this to their advantage as well. This kind of growing movement. A good example, like the book traces from, like, Clarence Thomas is a key figure in this book, but it goes through sort of the ways people use, like, defamation lawsuits and things like that to start to chill and intimidate smaller newspapers. Like a New York Times is kind of bulletproof. They have enough revenue, the highest powered legal team on retainer. They're not really worried. They're worried, but they are safe. But the amount of, like, local newspapers that people go after, and there are law firms dedicated to this. This one woman who went to Georgetown Law, I didn't know her. She started, I think, right after me. Very wildly successful, awful human being, kind of attractive, just being fair. But I'm going to read a passage that relates to a law professor I had, who I knew was a D.C. Circuit judge and a Reagan appointee, I want to say, or maybe a Nixon appointee. No, a Reagan appointee, I think. But I'm going to read this passage just because then I can tell you some stories about having him for a professor. But this is a very... There is no place for us is the way out in front runner for book of the year for me so far. And in a year where there wasn't such a dominant book in my psyche, this is a great book. And I'm telling you, if you are at all interested in just knowing another one of the nefarious ways that Republicans are trying to undermine our constitutional law and our freedom of the press, this is a really clear, readable, interesting book. So I don't know this person. Even though he works at the Times and so is my brother, it's just my brother, he wouldn't have gotten me a book that stunk, but this book actually is quite excellent. So if anything I just said interests you, I highly recommend it. But I'm going to read from just a little bit. Larry Silberman was cranky. It was the morning of September 14th, 2020, and the judge and his two of his colleagues on the Federal Appeals Court in Washington, D.C., were about to hear oral arguments in an important First Amendment case. COVID was raging, and so court was in session virtually. Silberman, who was about to turn 85, had long since taken senior status, and he only sat on the court about a third of the time that it was in session. But he was on this morning, and like so many others in the first year of the pandemic, he appeared to be having trouble navigating the Zoom video conferencing setup. Lawyers in the digital meeting room overheard him mutter bullshit as he leaned in toward his computer's camera, his glowering face and bald head all that was visible. In the nearly 30 years since his friend Clarence Thomas had ascended to the Supreme Court, Silberman's stature in conservative circles had only grown. A big part of it was his myriad rulings in service of Republicans and right-wing causes. Whether it was helping the Reagan administration wriggle out of the Iran-Contra scandal, making it harder for Bill Clinton to wriggle out of the Monica Lewinsky scandal, or laying the legal groundwork for one of the Supreme Court's most important decisions against gun control. But Silberman's status as a conservative folk hero was about more than how he ruled from the bench. In his time, he had been the rare federal judge who was also an unabashed ideological activist. During the Clinton administration, he and his wife, Ricky, had pushed the conservative journalist David Brock to pursue the Troopergate scandal in the hopes of taking down the Democratic president. He had opposed the renaming of military bases that honored Confederate leaders. He had been a behind-the-scenes advisor to the Wall Street Journal's hardline editorial page. He even denounced the Supreme Court as a largely illegitimate institution because he perceived its justices as straying from the original conservative meaning of the Constitution. Paradoxically, he also argued that other judges who take political positions jeopardize the whole judiciary. Now, I only read that to you. There's too many individual good stories and threads for me to give you the book, like from one passage. I'm just telling you, I'm giving it the J-L Cauvin seal of approval, definitely recommend. But the reason I wanted to share that Larry Silberman passage was he's my administrative law professor in my second year of law school. I got like a B, I think, in the class, or a B minus, which in law school is not a great grade. That's like in a school that isn't trying to get everybody good GPAs, I probably would have gotten like a C. But I think I got a B in the class. I could be wrong, but I think it was a B. But he was a DC circuit judge, so that's very prestigious. I was not as politically active as I am. I didn't know his track record. I didn't know that he was basically like best friends / mentor of Clarence Thomas. Like he was at the time, like a 12 to 15 year mentor of Clarence Thomas. Like he is the emperor to Clarence Thomas's Darth Vader, okay, in both skin color and mentorship. And I remember having him for class, though, and knowing that he was like a Reagan guy, and you're like, he's from a different era. But I remember we had this one case that involved an old Supreme Court case. And I want to say the name was not like Wong Fu Julia Newmar, but it was like Wong Sun or something like that. I'm forgetting the case. It might have been Wong Fu, but I don't think it was. But the point is, it had Wong and something in it. And he made this big point in front of our class in 2002 or 2003. And I don't want to hear anybody laughing. It's a legitimate name. It's a legitimate name. It's that culture. Nobody laugh. And we're all in our heads going like, okay. I don't know. Are you projecting? Like, would you have been like stoning Asians back in your youth? And now you want to make sure we know like... But then in another discussion of a case, he showed off his Reagan ass when he did something. He literally referenced like... And, you know, there were times where I swear to God, there were times where, you know, there was an idea that some of the people were cheating welfare, and you'd have these women in their big Cadillacs driving down. I was like, whoa! I was like, what is this, Don Imus teaches law school? What in the fuck? Dude, it's 2003. I get that you're from a different time, but it ain't 81 anymore or 68. You're a DC circuit judge. Do you not know you're on the second highest court in the land? Do you not know you shouldn't talk like a racist 80s New York talk radio personality, Judge Silberman? But he's dead now, so bye-bye. But it's hard to not... He was like the first. He was like the OG political right-wing justice or judge. He never made it to the highest court, but he was very much like the emperor. He's like, Clarence Thomas, you will get to the Supreme Court and unite the force. And fuck Democrats, by the way. With their big Cadillacs, you know how they do it, welfare. Unreal. So I just wanted to share that because I thought it would be funny. The book is amazing, but I had to share a Judge Lawrence Silberman story. So, 2 recommended books, 1 paperback, 1 hardcover. I recommend both. One may appeal to you more than the other, but I recommend both this month. Now, next month, and I got to get going, folks. I don't even know if I'm strong enough physically to read this book. But despite the New York Times destroying Ron Chernow's new book, okay, and I'm thinking about doing a sketch video for a gym called Chernow's. I'm not even kidding. Where all the weights are just Ron Chernow books. So this would be Mark Twain is his biggest yet. So I'd be like, oh shit, he's gonna go Twain. He's going for Twain. Like powder up wrist wraps and just like, and everybody cheers around me like I just did a personal best. Anyway, weightlifting, guys, that may not appeal to you. But I'm going to read Mark Twain's 480,000 page biography by Ron Chernow. So that's next month. So I better start now. This is going to be like a July 31st down to the wire review where I'm like at 11:50 p.m. and I'm done. Upload. So that's it, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being Patreon subscribers. I do appreciate it. And yeah, remember, books. They're like documentaries for smart people.